6 a.m. The Coast Guard cutter Munro was 300 miles south of Iceland, locked onto a 330-meter oil tanker called the Marlin Luanda. Running out of ocean, the tanker was making a beeline for Russian waters. Then, at 8:47 a.m., a flash message hit Combat Information Center. A Russian submarine and 2 surface combatants had sortied from the Northern Fleet on an intercept course. Classification: Akula-class. Speed: 20+ knots submerged. If the sub reached the tanker before Americans could board, the dynamic flipped. You do not fast rope onto a deck while a Russian attack submarine sits at periscope depth. This is the story of how a Coast Guard cutter, 2 destroyers, and hidden Navy SEALs seized a sanctioned tanker before Russia could stop them. If you believe American resolve at sea is non-negotiable, tap like now and comment seized. Moscow was betting on the math. Send the sub, shrink the window, force Americans to choose. Board now in terrible weather, or wait and risk facing a Russian warship. Either way, Russia wins. Solid bet. However, Russia has been testing American resolve at sea since the Cold War. Their win record makes the New York Jets look good. Within 3 hours, C-17 Globemasters began landing at RAF bases across the UK, at least 10 of them. Ground crews unloaded MH-60 Blackhawks, MH-47 Chinooks, and crates stenciled for the 161st SOAR. The Night Stalkers at RAF Fairford, CV-22B Ospreys ran fast rope drills in broad daylight. At RAF Mildenhall, an AC-130J Ghost Rider rolled off a cargo ramp. Aviation analysts posted every tail number. Flight tracking sites went white hot. The message was loud enough to hear in Moscow. America was coming with enough hardware to handle anything Russia put in the water. But that was the show. Every C-17 and tail number was designed to be seen. The real strike package was already at sea, riding a ship nobody was watching. The submarine had to cross the GIUK Gap, the stretch between Greenland, Iceland, and the UK. The worst piece of ocean for a Russian submarine commander. NATO has been listening to this choke point since 1952. At 30,000 feet, a US Navy P-8 Poseidon had been dropping sonobuoy patterns. The P-8 carries 129 sonobuoys. Each one hits the water, deploys a hydrophone, and listens. Pump vibrations, propeller cavitation, the groan of a steel pressure hull at depth. Sound travels 4 times faster in water than air. A submarine's pump vibration at 200 hertz can travel 60 miles. The sub can go slow. It can go quiet. But it cannot stop the ocean from carrying its noise to a hydrophone it never knew was there. The American P-8 wasn't alone. A Royal Air Force P-8 worked the North Sea. A Norwegian P-8 covered Norwegian sea approaches. An RAF R C-135W rivet joint copied every Russian communication. 3 nation submarine hunting aircraft sharing data in real time. The Russian submarine was driving into a surveillance net that covered the entire northern Atlantic. And every mile it advanced, the net got tighter. When the American P-8 got a bearing fix east of Iceland, it dropped a sonobuoy barrier ahead of the sub's course. The sub commander went into sprint and drift, full power to 25 knots to clear the field. Then engines cut. The P-8 had already dropped a second pattern 5 miles ahead. The submarine drifted right into it. He tried tucking under a commercial shipping lane. Container ships masking his noise. For a few hours, it worked. Then the rivet joint intercepted a course change order. The RAF P-8 repositioned and dropped a pattern exactly where the new heading would take him. He thought he was hiding. They were reading his mail. The sub made a hard turn with depth change, a knuckle. Against a single tracker, it buys minutes. Against 3 P-8s cross-queuing, it bought nothing. Last card. He took the boat below the thermocline and cut to battery power. Near silent. The sonobuoy net went fuzzy. Then the American P-8 switched to depth-set buoys. and made a low pass with its magnetic anomaly detector. A submarine can silence engines. It can't stop being 10,000 tons of steel. Contact regained. Every evasion costs time. A submarine running sprint drift zigzags is not making 20 knots. It's making 12, maybe 10. Every hour the P-8 forced him off course was another hour. Americans bought to wait for weather. Type bought time if you see the strategy. By evening on January 6th, 2 Arleigh Burke-class destroyers, the USS Bulkley and USS Paul Ignatius, joined the Munro formation. Each Burke displaces 9,200 tons with an Aegis combat system, 96 vertical launch cells, and sonar suites purpose-built to retire submarines. Their sonar locked the submarine's acoustic signature. Active sonar started pinging, loud, deliberate, designed to be heard inside the pressure hull. Active sonar at full power is a physical force. It rattles fittings, echoes through the hull. Every ping tells the commander, "I know exactly where you are." The Americans weren't pinging to find him. They already had him. They were pinging to make sure he knew it. An Arleigh Burke, engaging a submarine, launches an ASROC, a rocket that flies to target area, drops a torpedo, and goes active on the hull. From launch to impact, 30 seconds. And here's what sat heaviest on that commander's shoulders. He could hear the Munro, right there, unarmored. A 1 torpedo problem. He could take the shot. Then he'd have 2 destroyers with his position fixed. P-8S overhead with torpedoes ready, and certainty that firing meant he and his crew wouldn't survive 60 seconds. That's the arithmetic of submarine intimidation against the most powerful navy on Earth. For 16 days, the North Atlantic had been doing what it does in January. 15-foot swells, horizontal rain, visibility in yards. You can't fly a helicopter in that. Every day the weather held. The submarine got closer. Then, January 7th, early morning, the Atlantic blinked. Swells dropped to 4 feet. Wind went down. Visibility opened. For the first time in 16 days, a helicopter could work over the tanker. It was go time. On the Munro's flight deck, a Coast Guard MH-65 Dolphin spun up. The MSRT, Maritime Security Response Team, loaded in full boarding kit, weapons, breaching equipment, flex cuffs. The MH-65 lifted off and banked toward the Marlin Luanda's silhouette. From the tanker's bridge, the captain watched a single Coast Guard helicopter approach. 1 helicopter, 1 cutter. 33 crew members had been briefed this would look manageable, small, something the Russian Navy could respond to. The captain reached for his radio to signal Murmansk. He never completed that transmission because 2 shapes emerged from the haze behind the MH-65. MH-6M, little birds, under 3,000 pounds each, barely bigger than a car, slid into formation like they'd been there the whole time. The Night Stalker's signature aircraft, the same airframe from Mogadishu and Abbottabad. The crew was now watching 3 helicopters, where 30 seconds ago, there had been none. The 161st SOAR had stashed little birds on the Munro before the pursuit made news, while C-17S delivered hardware to England. The buildup every analyst tracked. The actual strike package had been riding a Coast Guard cutter for 2 weeks. Navy SEALs rode external bench seats, legs dangling over the North Atlantic in January, 300 miles from coastline in a helicopter weighing less than a pickup with armed operators on the outside. Nobody knew they existed until they were in the air and closing. The first operators on deck were not SEALs. They were Coast Guard. The MSRT fast-roped from the MH-65 onto the forward deck. These are not standard boarding teams. They train alongside SEALs and Delta for this. The reason is legal. Only the Coast Guard has federal authority to execute a seizure warrant on the high seas. That's why a Coast Guard cutter spent 16 days in January storms instead of a Navy destroyer. The United States deployed 2 Aegis destroyers, 3 nations sub-hunting aircraft, a signals platform, a Special Operations Regiment, and Navy SEALs. And the people who took the ship wore Coast Guard patches. Comment Coast Guard if you see the legal authority. They went for the bridge first. Communication secured, navigation locked, scuttling capability gone in seconds. If the captain had gotten a distress signal out, the situation changes. A Russian warship responding to distress from a Russian flag vessel has different legal standing than a submarine lurking on intercept. The captain didn't get that signal out. The MSRT was on the bridge before the crew understood what was happening. Within 90 seconds, confirmation came. Bridge secured. All communications dark. The Marlin Luanda was no longer transmitting. Captain and bridge crew were flex-cuffed and moved to holding. The MSRT split into clearing teams and worked down through the interior. Narrow corridors, steep ladderways, every hatch a blind corner. Every compartment cleared before moving on. The engineering spaces were next, because whoever holds the engine room decides where 330 meters of tanker goes. 33 crew members searched, separated, secured. Behind tactical teams came evidence units, chain of custody, digital forensics, every navigation log preserved for federal court, hard drives pulled, satellite records imaged. Above deck, the little birds circled, SEALs on benches, weapons visible, filmed in real time by the tanker crew's cameras, streaming to Russian state media. The footage caught everything. The egg-shaped fuselage, operators on skids, deliberate circles overhead. Nobody needed a translator. You're watching the Coast Guard take your bridge while Navy SEALs orbit above. Sitting this one out is the smart choice. Type sitting out if you understand the message. If you believe American coordination at sea is unmatched, comment coordinated below. If you support the operators who executed this, tap like. And if you want coverage of multi-domain operations, share and subscribe, because this wasn't just a boarding, it was a statement. Submarines don't intimidate when P-8s read your mail. Weather doesn't protect when America waits for the window. And painted tricolors don't matter when the Coast Guard has a warrant.